What's a historical fact that you had to learn on your own and not in school?
So I recently visited some of the slave castles in Ghana and I was sick to my stomach. About 100 to 150 people were forced into these slave dungeons. Once they reached the slave dungeons, the human waste that they had to sit in and stand in was about knee deep. And when I say human waste, I mean the poop, the pee, the throw up, the blood, the menstrual blood. All of that they had to stand in, and everything else that comes out of the human body. Not only that, they had to breathe in and inhale all of those toxins because there was no ventilation in those dungeons. Mind you, they weren't just sitting in there for days or maybe weeks. They were sitting in there for up to 3 months straight. The conditions were so bad that even as I stood there hundreds of years later, I can still smell the human waste. I mean, I was sick to my stomach. Y'all, was people up in there coughing. Those tiny little lines up there, those are not carvings done by an object. Those were done by people's nails digging into the stone wall because they were trying to desperately escape the death dungeon. Men who fought back were put into those death dungeons. And let's say they put about 10 of those men in that death dungeon. They wouldn't pull out the dead bodies until the last person died. That skull and that X represented death. It meant once you went in there, you were not coming back out alive. And also, there were churches built up over these slave dungeons, and as women and men were screaming, these so-called holy people were sitting above them worshiping God. Not only that, they specifically put these churches over the dungeons to represent heaven and HE double hockey sticks. Part 2 will be coming up because what they did to the women was disgusting. I was about to go to sleep, but y'all have not been playing about this part 2, so let's get straight to it. Also, trigger warning because I will be talking about sexual assault. So the women who fought back were beaten and chained to a cannonball that looked like this. They were forced to stand up with another cannonball in their hands, and they were forced to hold them for over 24 hours. These are not women who have their full strength. They have been malnourished. Some of them are very sick. Some of them have caught diseases over the way, and they mostly done this to show other women that this would happen if they retaliated against rape. Another punishment for the woman is that they would tie the cannonball to her ankle and just throw her in the ocean and let her drown. Another thing, I got to go up to where, the governor lived, which was on the top floor. And this is pretty much where he would allow the women to come out of their dungeons, and they would force the women to roam so that the governor can choose who he wanted to rape. Once the governor chose, they would actually bring the woman to this well and make her rinse off. She would go through this door, and mind you, this door was attached to the dungeon. And this is the staircase in the dungeon that led to the governor's room. So after they forced the woman to rinse off and prepare herself to get sexually assaulted, they would go into this room, which is where the governor pretty much stayed. So the governor wasn't the only one allowed to sexually assault these women. It was common for soldiers to do the same thing. Soldiers were known for getting drunk and sexually assaulting these women. So what would happen if they found out that a woman was pregnant while she was at the castles? They would send the woman off somewhere near the castles and make her raise the baby enough to be kind of on its own. But once the baby was at a point where it didn't need to be breastfed, they would send the mother off back into the slave quarters and put her back in a dungeon so that she can wait until another slave ship comes so that she can be shipped off. If they found out that a woman was pregnant on a ship, they would just throw her overboard and let her drown because they would see her as no longer valuable. And they saw her as non-valuable because they didn't think that they could sell pregnant women. So yeah, that's pretty much what I learned while I was at the castles in Ghana. I really do encourage, especially all my Black people, to go out there and see. Like, it's one thing to hear about it, but it's another thing to be in that environment.